Welcome to Practical Talk for Practical Thought. This is our second episode of the podcast, and I have Joe Scapelitte again, ready to answer some questions that he hasn't seen before. We're just gonna kind of go off the cuff, and this one is very related to the last podcast that you saw because I thought we hit on a couple things and that could have been expanded on. And this is something that I know you know a lot about, and something that is very kind of important and has affected your life and a lot of people you know since you've been in psychology and counseling. So the question I want to ask is, could you provide a little background on how phobias are initially wired into the brain?
Ooh.
So when we think of creating regiments and habits, there's this long, drawn-out process that occurs to get to that point. To habitually create something that we want to accomplish, whether it be weight loss or walking every day or being able to eat the right foods. Yet I feel like a phobia, and maybe I could be wrong, but it's kind of instantly wired. Like it only takes one little thing and it creates a neural pathway that it's there. It's almost like you took a year worth of habitual training, so to speak, and you just like compacted it into like one moment. So in addition to that question, what are the key differences in those two processes that you know of?
What two processes specifically?
The process of
how phobias are developed.
Right, that's the first one. And then how does that compare to the long drawn out process of trying to regiment yourself for something a little bit more, I should say lighthearted, but something every day, like I said,
Behavioral
eating better,
modification.
Like that. Right.
How do you modify your own behaviors?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're kind of both a little different, but let's give it a shot. So.
Right. What are the key differences?
Right. Well, phobias, I think everybody knows. Everybody's kind of afraid of something. I think phobias generally stem from fight or flight that was put within our brain chemistry and survival mechanisms back whenever man started, and women. So it's easy. If you're a caveman and you run out and you see a dinosaur, sort of chasing you,
right?
You run away because you're afraid you're going to get eaten. So that's a natural, normal phobia. That's a fear for survival. Similarly, when a phobia begins within a person, it too is a mode of survival. For an example, if somebody's afraid of snakes, generally, it's because they're afraid they're going to get bitten by the snake and die. Okay, that's why snakes are a common fear, but it's a justifiable kind of a fear in that you're trying to survive.
Right.
Now, if we talk about other phobias like claustrophobia, closed-in spaces, you don't want to go in an elevator. Well, once again, it's fight or flight, it's survival, because you don't want to be left out of control. This is the key issue, out of what you believe is out of control. So when you go into an elevator, it isn't going into an elevator not thinking about it, saying to yourself, well, it's an elevator, and if it gets stuck, I'll ring the bell and somebody will come and get me. What a claustrophobic will think is, I'm in here forever, I'm in the casket, under the ground, and this is where I'm going to stay for the rest of my life and for eternity. So it becomes catastrophic. Catastrophic is a thinking mechanism which anxiety leaning type of people go to. That's their go-to for survival, is catastrophic in order to be secure. So there's kind of a miswiring to some degree because there's a higher intensity within the chemistry that kicks up the chemistry quicker for people. So
okay, like if you're a baby born, you're born with a clean slate, so to speak. So
no, you're not.
Okay.
No, you're not. You're at the mercy of your genetics, your DNA. chances are, if you have an anxiety disorder, your parents or someone back, maybe a generation or two, had extreme anxiety disorders.
Does that apply to phobias that kind of originate from some traumatic experience? For example, like I said, a clean slate because, say, as a baby, this is presumptuous maybe, but you're not afraid of elevators, to use your analogy, but then something happens in an elevator. So,
Well, what I'm trying to do is get to the root. We can talk about the elevator, but there's a root issue here, and that's a heightened sense of awareness, a heightened sense of when you look around, you're hyper sensitive. You're looking like, you ever see a squirrel? You look at a squirrel, he's like this, all over the place.
Hypervigilant.
Hypervigilant. Thank you, Mark. Couldn't come up with that word, but thank you. And the squirrel's looking everywhere, and he's going, "Who's going to hurt me? Who's going to attack me?" And he's like, that's an example of someone who has a heightened state, already predisposed, like the squirrel. Some human beings have that, whereas it's so heightened that any ounce of attack or perceived attack will result in a reaction that is fight or flight. Now your chemistry kicks up, your heart races, you start to sweat, you don't breathe real well, you hyperventilate. That's a reaction to stress. Why do some people just walk around and nothing bothers them? Some people are like this. It's chemical. It is genetic.
So you're saying in every case it's more evolutionary than it is environmental.
Well,
the initial question I was asking was what's different between, let's just say there was the clean slate situation that I'm talking about, where someone isn't afraid of elevators, but in an instant, the wiring to the brain from one traumatic experience could create.
I know I'm not answering your question.
That's okay. I was just.
But
wondering.
I'm trying to get to the root, and then expound on what your question is. Okay. Because if we understand the biology of a normal, everyday human, then we can understand how a phobia will kick in. This is my point. If we understand to begin with that some people are more predisposed to anxiety, fears, phobias, hypervigilance, if your chemistry is set up that way through your genetics, then you're going to have a better chance to unfortunately get anxiety reactions and fight or flight reactions to the simplest things. That's the DNA. That's the genetic compound.
Okay.
So that if we have a person who is pretty much a flat affect, the personality is pretty, normal, so we say. I hate to keep using that word normal, but it's good for our listeners. The average.
Baseline.
Baseline, thank you. Average. The individual might get upset for a second or two and rationalize through it and say, this, and you can't do that going back into time, but this dinosaur is just a dinosaur and he can't catch me because my cave's right there. He can rationalize through it and walk into his cave. But then you have those who look at the dinosaur, just the sight of the smell in the distance of a dinosaur will induce panic.
So
will kick in the fight or flight. So it's genetic, it's chemical, and then as a reaction to that becomes behavioral.
So you're saying the baseline difference is you have to look at genetics in the way that's and then from there it's just going to depend on the person.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now
it could be
there are some
everybody.
Trauma situations that don't necessarily follow that rule. For example, someone goes to war and sees his friend getting shot, and he goes into post-stress trauma disorder,
right.
PTSD, and I mean that's a normal reaction to what he saw. It doesn't matter what your chemistry may or may not be, unless you're a psychopath or a sociopath or any of those groupings where you're so baseline, you stay there. It doesn't matter. You could kill somebody and nothing will rise, but that's unusual. Generally speaking, there are traumatic events that also trigger. Now, let's get into the neuropathology for which you refer to.
Yeah, and it's a dynamic question, and it might be rhetorical. I mean, I know there's a lot of factors that go into it. I was I was sitting there thinking, like, someone could develop a phobia, the neural pathway, and it could be created in a second.
Absolutely.
And I've had experience with that. Yet it would take them 3 months to be able to form a healthy habit.
Right.
And I'm sitting here going, I mean, God, the difference in time. Like, and you think it would be the same mechanism, but obviously it's not.
They're not. Yeah. Fight or flight is the strongest human reaction, emotion, feeling that someone can feel. Whereas a goal from 3 months from now, I want to lose weight, has no ramification that you're going to die if you don't lose the weight. If somebody said to you, I'm going to stab you in your eye if you don't lose weight in 3 months, and you know they're going to do it.
Right.
And you know they're going to do it. You watch the weight you lose from the fear. Fear's a strong emotion. So I hope that kind of, sort of.
Yeah, it did.
But but there are also different classifications of phobias. Like, for an example, some people with generalized anxiety disorder who fly into panic develop the agoraphobia, the fear of agor, the marketplace, phobia being fear of the marketplace from the Greek. The person is so sometimes I'm having a tough time finding my words today. How come? The person is so paralyzed by fear that leaving the house, the fear of having a panic attack, the fear of the reaction of fight or flight, unwarranted anywhere. You go through a grocery store, there's no reason, logically and rationally, to have a panic attack. But if you had one there before, you figure it's the grocery store. What is it, the lights? Is it bright in here? Is there a lot of people around here? Maybe your brain starts to race. You develop these social phobias. You develop fear of leaving your house. Next thing you know, you're housebound. Now, that's the worst of all phobias because
fear of fear.
Fear of fear is the worst of all phobias because it stops you from living to the greatest extent. Now, I don't like elevators, back to that example again. You take the steps. If you don't want to be in an elevator, don't go in an. But if you want to leave your house and you want to go to the store or you want to go mess around and hang out with some buddies and they're having a party in Mayville, right, not far away, and next thing you know is I'm not going.
Yeah.
And you lose the quality of life. That's the difference between them. But once you start establishing that in your brain that this is something to be afraid of, then the neuropathology kicks in where it says, soon as I get to that, the stimuli come, the pathology begins to kick in up, you go into fight or flight, and when you do that, that's when you're in trouble as far as thoughts and reactions to the stimuli around you.
Okay, hold that thought, because then we're going to, that's the progression. I'm going through the questions anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So the next question is, we talked about the mind-body connection on the last podcast, but what steps would you take to catalyze an undoing of this process? And again, I know we could talk for hours about this, and what's the psychological difference between being able to quit?
You got to ask one question at a time. I'm not bright enough to answer both of those. I will tell you this.
Well, let me finish the question.
Go ahead.
And you can kind of wrap all these up and whatever response you formulate.
Okay.
Is fine. But what's the psychological difference between? This is a little redundant because it goes with the last question. But what's the psychological difference between being able to quit a bad habit versus rewiring a fear? Is it just the level of discomfort, or are there other things at play?
Yeah, it's a.
You kind of talked on that.
Yeah, it's kind of, they're very different. What was the first question again? You wanted to know
what steps would you take to catalyze an undoing of the of the rewiring?
Let's take patient A.
Okay.
Patient A comes into my office and says, "I went to the pharmacy and I couldn't breathe. I had to run home." Patient A tells me, "I'm afraid to leave my house." I say, "Well, you're here. That's good. Let's talk about what's going on. Please tell me what kind of events you've had in the last, say, year." "Well, I was pregnant, I had the baby, and since then I haven't been the same." Okay. So you understand that when you have a baby, a lot of girls, women get postpartum depression because the serotonin levels, the chemical levels, serotonin depletes. Well, that will also cause anxiety. So here you are, just had a baby, and chemically you're pretty messed up, and now you're having a reaction, a manifestation of the lack of the chemicals needed in your brain. So I said to the individual, it's really simple to get through this because this is your first experience at it. It's not like you've had it for years. We'll knock this out in no time. Call the doctor, get a benzodiazepine, which like Xanax, Librium, that family, and you're going to take this before you leave where you're going. And I promise you, then between that and the discussions as to why it happened and how it happened, and to not let it continue, you must desensitize. You must continue to go and face this, but face it with some tools.
Like
The tool being, in this case, the benzodiazepine. If it's necessary, there are antidepressants who also, if we need to go there. But let's try this first. 8 weeks later, the person's completely over because it has not been firmly entrenched with the individual that the pharmacy is a threat to their life anymore. Because they realize what's going on. They're taking a medication that calms that system, part of the brain out, and therefore can function and heal right away.
So taking care of the physical component so that they don't kind of spiral into this kind of doomsday scenario.
Yes.
with the going off on tangents about what's causing what.
Nip it.
Nip it in the butt, physically almost, so that it can kind of put
Yes.
a stop to that. Then on top of that, doing behavioral kind of stuff to kind of get
Cognitive behavioral. We think it through. That's
stuff.
the cognitive behavioral is to desensitize and to confront that from what you're afraid.
But you're a firm believer in saying let's get the physical component,
Absolutely.
the chemistry worked out first, because that's where it can spiral out of control.
That's where it comes from. I mean, the girl just had a baby. We know the serotonin levels are
right.
low. We know this is going to happen in some women. We know it. I had a woman one time who came in with her husband, and she wants to divorce him because she's unhappy, and he's saying, I don't know what's wrong with her. All of a sudden, she's, crazy. I mean, she's acting bizarre and all this. Come to find, and I took I asked her to take a log of her menstrual cycles. It had happened during that time, and we realized that the serotonin, once again, serotonin, big one,
Sure.
played a role in why she was acting the way she got on a SSRI. I don't remember which one it was, but one of those in that family, and they were honeymooning.
Sure.
But it was chemical.
Taking care of the chemical.
Taking care of the chemical. The behavioral is only a manifestation of what's going on inside chemically. Not all the time.
Sure, you're trying to rationalize and come up with your own thing, like what's happening.
Yeah, it's you can't think your way through some situations because the biology is taking control of more than you can handle, and that's why you need that psychotropic in this case in order to maintain, as you call, a baseline many times. Once you get to baseline, then you can sit down with someone like myself and go through, this is what happened, why it happened, how do I avoid that from happening again, and then get off the med.
Almost the analogy where they're saying, like, if you're in a fight with someone, calm down for about 5 minutes and then reapproach it, and maybe you can be more level-headed.
Yeah.
It's kind of an analogy like that.
Yeah,
Say,
well,
like, let's get you physically calmed down, then
Right.
we can learn to
Yeah, exactly. Because
resolve
if
whatever
someone's
else
in a
is going on.
rage and they're ready to fight,
Sure.
that
Make it
adrenaline's
back.
pumping. They're, they can't think it through. You're right. So we have to have something that steps in and acts as a calming agent, and sometimes we need to be forced calm, and that's what the medications do. Today's medications are so targeted and so effective, so powerful to handle these issues. No one should suffer anymore with anything. I shouldn't say that. There are so many conditions that are you're still going to suffer and still have symptoms, but at least they're going to be toned down enough where you can function.
Hold that thought,
Mm-hmm.
and the thing is, like, I know you're a huge advocate of that, and a lot of it is justified for you because anecdotally it's worked, and I think you could say that for a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that should shine light on, like, the validity of that. But hold that, because I'm going to ask you that in a second, but I'm just going to go on to the next question.
Sure. I hope we're doing okay. Oh, by the way, I have to say, as a little break here from all this intensity, thank you to all viewers. I mean, we don't have a lot of viewers, but the viewers who are watching, they're commenting and saying, "We want more. I want to learn more. This is interesting stuff."
Yeah, thanks.
And we thank you for that. And
Definitely.
keep it going.
So the next one is, in this, it's kind of a harder question because, again, we could expand on it quite a bit, but what is trauma quantified? Like, what mechanism quantifies trauma? For example, how does the brain discern between severe PTSD, phobias, casual fears, this type? Is there like a quantifying mechanism?
It reminds me. It remind. I almost want to respond by saying this: is the moon made out of cheddar cheese, Romano cheese, or ricotta?
Wow.
What is the moon made of? Here's the problem. Here's the problem. Although we understand a lot of it, there's so much we don't. Here's the problem. Throughout the body, we really can do really well physiologically. We can see because of results. Like right now, if you got an infection, we give you an antibiotic, it goes away. We can see immediate results. With the brain, we don't know enough about the brain yet and how it operates. We do know certain sections of the brain do certain things. We know that when we wire a certain way, we'll follow that pattern. Some things we do know. But to answer your question, sometimes there's a fine line between them. Now, the question of phobia versus trauma versus what was the third thing?
I said
there was three.
Like if you were to quantify it in terms of intensity, maybe, and how the brain will discern between different things. For example, I could be somebody could be deathly afraid of snakes. I could be afraid of snakes and have a mild fear, be like, I don't like that, and it's just kind of a mild response to it. Where if you put me in another situation where, like, say, I don't like bats and I start freaking out, why? How does the brain know? How does it gauge what reaction I'm going to have based on like a
threat.
fear level? You know what I'm saying? It's almost like it knows.
It
like,
measures.
Well, this one is up here for him.
It measures the threat. Your brain measures the threat.
So the brain does quantify it.
Yeah,
it does quantify fear.
Well, unfortunately,
the level of fear.
We control it because if someone's afraid of going over a bridge and you're not, you kind of say, "What are you afraid of?"
Well, I'm talking in the same person. I understand that different people are going to have different fears. But
no, I understand what you're saying. No, I understand
yeah, I know you do.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think how the person perceives the threat, what their biology is in reaction to the threat, and meaning how set up are they beforehand, as I mentioned before, to reacting, panicking because of biology. So every individual is different. Every situation is different. There's no clear cut. However, the only way to quantify it is to say, what is your reaction and how does it affect your life to the point where it doesn't allow you to live a full life? So, if I go to a snake and I can't breathe for 3 months, we know that's a 10 on the list of problems. However, if you get in an elevator and have no symptoms, that same person has nothing, we know. So it's the stimuli, the chemistry, the stimuli, the reaction to the stimuli, and the embeddedness of the neuropathology that keeps that same behavior and reacting the same way. So it's different for everybody. There are people that could go to war and shoot people and not think anything of it.
So there's not some basic human function that would do that. For example, like, again, I don't know anything about brain chemistry, or I'm not a neurologist or anything.
Neither am I, by the way.
But you would it's almost like if someone has a severe reaction to something, a traumatic incident, it's almost like it's creating more pathways, and you can actually quantify the number of pathways that are involved in that process. Again, that is
MRIs. Yeah,
I have no idea if that's how
they will put someone in an MRI machine and induce stimuli and watch brain reaction.
And you
can see it.
That's awesome.
You can see it.
Wow.
But that in 10 cents gets you a cup of coffee because it does no good. We already know what your reaction is.
Right.
It doesn't make any difference. If you're a 10 in the panic scale, Makes no difference what your brain shows on an MRI.
But I guess the question was like, again, it could be rhetoric. It's like, why? Why? Like, how does that work? Why does that?
Well,
why does that do that?
Let's go
And
back
like,
to my original statement or thesis, and that was that individuals are looking for survival and will do anything to stay alive because that's instinctually within us to survive. And if they see a threat, warranted or unwarranted, real or unreal, the reaction is going to be the same. It makes no difference.
Fair enough. And it could be just based on.
Could be a bird flying by, and you can go into a full-fledged panic attack because you think the birds, like you saw the movie Alfred Hitchcock, the birds, you think birds are going to come swooping down on you.
Sure. So
you can create any fear you want.
Yeah, you're implying that a lot of it could be based on past experiences, minor or major.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Anytime your man seeks pleasure, tries to eliminate pain. So therefore, if you're in front of pain, you run from it. Anxiety is pain, I run.
Fight.
Simple.
Yeah.
So what do? Well, we go confront the pain is with tools. We have tools, medications, cognitive behavioral therapy, hypnotherapy, meditations. There are a million, exercise and diet, a million tools to take you back to the baseline. You just need to look at them, go to someone that can tell you or show you the way and the path to remove and hopefully permanently remove these things that stand in your way to living. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the last question, and I'm not sure how we are on time, but I guess it's kind of irrelevant, but
it's our podcast. We can go half hour, we can go 12 days if we want to.
Days.
It's our podcast.
I said I did.
Yeah. Very spiritual.
This goes back to I said right? I didn't say
You said
Right.
See, that helps. See how that helps you?
This goes back to the question I asked before, and that was, what's your thoughts on the divide between plant medicine and Western medicine? So, does a happy medium exist there? And what is the ultimate goal of medicating, and how does that relate to what we originally talked about with rewiring?
Okay.
So,
well, I've had
just to add on that, because I feel like it's very rare. Like I believe it's very rare. You're one of the rare people that actually feels like there could be a happy medium there. There's just like the polarity we have kind of in politics, we also have in this regard too, where there's some people that are strictly Western medicine and others that think they can achieve the same stuff in a more holistic manner through plant medicine.
I understand. Well, I had one individual who refused to take medication. I'm not taking that medication. They're not going to control my mind, and I'm not going to walk around like a zombie and all that. By the way, if you have the right doctor, the right med, and find the right med, because we don't know specifically, like you could take insulin to bring up insulin levels, but you don't know the brain what it needs. So you have to play, unfortunately, with a good doctor will help you through it all to find the right meds that make it, and you don't walk around like a zombie. Not today's medicine. I mean, in the old days, you pump Thorazine and you walk around like a zombie. Yeah, back in the 60s. But dear God, that's gone. So I have a person who doesn't want to take any meds. Back to the story. And I said, let's try the holistic approach. So, okay, here's what you need to do if you want to use the holistic approach. Okay, you're going to need to exercise. You're going to need to walk 45 minutes a day. You're going to need acupuncture. You're going to need probably smoke a doob before you go do it. Those are all natural.
I think I already know his response, but go ahead.
Yeah. So the guy, I give him a program, and it's just like majorly comprehensive, including not linseed oil, flaxseed oil, all the things you need. And they could get to a certain point. It helped. They get to a certain point, but couldn't get over the hump. And once they saw that holistically was helpful, but not enough to stop the problems going on, then psychotropic intervention was warranted, and they tried it and were completely successful with that. So, but they still use the holistic approach now that they're on the med. And once they baseline, we're going to take them off the med with the holistic approach. See, the damage has been done over 30, 40 years, and people expect the McDonald's thing. Give me my hamburger. 5 seconds later, you're supposed to be okay. You got to heal. The brain's got to heal. The neuropathology's got to heal. So it takes time. So we'll use the psychotropic intervention for a time until you can baseline, and then we withdraw it slowly to see the reaction. Some people, just like insulin, need it the rest of their life. It depends on the person, the situation, the condition, etc. Schizophrenia, for an example, constant medication. There's no other way. But, if you've got a phobia, for an example, because you brought that up to start with, then we've got the benzodiazepines to help, or perhaps, as I said, the SSRIs. They'll get you through it, and then we can take them away. And then because you will baseline, and the mental strategies to use, because we did that in cognitive behavioral therapy, what strategies to use if it should return that thought process, okay? Then you know what to do, and you should be in good shape. If you see it coming back and you can't control it, then we go back on the psychotropics. Big deal. I don't see why people are so afraid to take them. They're so helpful today. They're miracle drugs.
Psychotropics. Are you talking like psilocybin, or are you talking Western psilocybin, like magic mushroom? LSD?
I can't.
Psychotropics.
I see. No, I can't.
You're talking about the Western brand.
Yeah,
so to
I
speak.
can't speak on natural holistic mushrooms and what they do. A lot of people claim that they're spiritual awakenings and brought them to a better place. That's fine. Go do it.
Right.
I'm not. I don't know enough about it. And I can tell you, I know enough about psychotropic medications that I can tell you what I can tell you. I'm on the Western side of, because it's proven scientifically to work. That's all I can go with. I can't prove anything to do with
psilocybin?
No.
You're not.
What's it? Hayakawa? Or what's it called?
Oh, ayahuasca.
Ayahuasca. Yeah, or we're not going to go down to Peru and have them blow stuff up my nose. I mean, I don't know enough about it.
Sure, and you're not really taking a side. You're just saying this is my realm. I do know that this is effective, and the other side could be just as effective.
It could be.
I don't have enough.
I don't have enough information or knowledge to know, and I don't know anything about it. But I can tell you what I do know about, and that's psychotropics work.
Okay. That's really
miracly,
and I kind of figured that would be your answer.
Yeah, that's.
I was just asking if
I don't
you
object
to it.
No, I don't object to anything that works.
Well,
but I don't know enough to say to someone like on a podcast that we're speaking to our friends here.
Right.
I can't say to you, go try, this or that or whatever, because I don't know. But I can tell you that if this inhibits your ability to function, the cognitive behavioral approach together, you may not need psychotropic meds, but if it's inhibiting you to a point, some cases they come in the door, I tell them, go see your doctor, I'll call them, we're going to get you on a psychotropic, then come in, because I can't talk to them because they're off the wall. However, there are other people who come in, are fine, that don't need a psychotropic, they just need somebody to talk to try to sort through it in a cognitive behavioral. There's no answer unless that individual is evaluated, spoken to, understood, so that I, in my position, can say, let's do this first and see where it goes. I will try to keep them off psychotropics. I don't promote it. I'm not paid by pharma. But I can tell you that I'll try the natural holistic approach first, unless they're so unable to function. Then I tell them, go see your doctor. I'll call your doctor, and here's what we're going to do. And I'll call the doctor, and I'll say, hey, look, what I see here is ABC. I suggest ABC. You're the doctor. You do what you want. But this is what I suggest. 99 times out of 100, they'll do it. And the person's fine. Because experientially, my experience with cognitive behavioral therapy, hypnotherapy, psychotropics is in that realm. I know about that realm, and I can speak to it.
Right.
I hope
fair enough. That's exactly. Yeah, I totally understand that, and I figure that's that's how you would answer it. So
why'd you ask the question if you know how I'd answer?
I just wanted to hear it from your mouth. Well, the one of the questions was how does it relate to the wiring of it? But you're basically what you've said. I mean, just to summarize, what you said is it might not directly rewire, but it allows the person to be able to rewire. Is that a decent summation?
Sure.
It's going to help you be able
Sure.
to use other
Whether
methods
it's
to get,
whether or the chemical in your brain,
it's going to open the gate
yeah.
at least to help you rewire.
Like if you're really highly anxious, the GABA chemical in your brain is affected by benzodiazepines. It calms you down. If you are highly depressed, or you feel like with women menstruating, the serotonin reuptake inhibitors are very effective in that realm. It depends on what we're dealing with, depends on what the situation is what psychotropic is used. Then the therapy is based on the individual, what their motivation is, what their intelligence is, where they want to go. I mean, it is so wide open because everybody's different. Their biology is different, their personalities are different, so you have to assess each and every one of them to determine where they're at, and then I use the word attack it from there, whatever the issue is, and let's root this out.
Okay.
Pull it out like a bad tooth.
Okay, fair enough. Well, that was it.
That's it? That's the only
That's it for
questions
this
you got for
podcast.
today?
That's it.
I can't wait for the next topic.
Just those 20 questions.
I don't know what Mark's going to ask me, and I will tell you.
Maybe we'll go to something a little bit more
Bizarre?
maybe bizarre. I was thinking either more bizarre, or maybe a little bit more. I want to say lighthearted. It's not like this isn't lighthearted, but
Well, it's pretty intense, I think.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
pretty-
people
maybe
are
that's
watching and
less
saying,
intense.
that's me, I need to go see somebody.
yeah,
You know, you don't know.
right.
We're here to help you. We're here to give you some information that might be helpful in your life. That's what we're here for. No other reason.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining us again for episode 2, and I'll be formulating some more talking points for
Hidden
episode
questions.
3, some more hidden questions for episode 3, and we'll go from there.
A lot of fun. We hope you enjoyed it.